Now that we have the basics of attentional intonation and how you can move that focus word around, how it might interact with the structural intonation, today we're going to look at 3 things. The first thing is, of course, emphasis. The second thing is contrast. And the third thing is shifting the focus word without any particular emphasis or contrast. Now, one very important thing to keep in mind about this lesson: we're going to look at many different types of examples, but examples of this kind on this topic can only go so far because they're going to be rooted in a context, and I'm sort of trying to pull that out of a random context. So this is some extra practice, help you kind of understand what's going on better. Later in this series, towards the end, we are going to be looking at real examples taken from like TV clips or different things like that, so that we can actually analyze what the intonation is doing structurally, attentionally, emotionally, and see how that fits in that particular context. Let's start with emphasis. Emphasis is simply highlighting a particular word by making it stand out even more using the focus of the attentional intonation. So it's not simply the focus word that's going to be a little bit higher, stand out a little bit more compared to the other stresses. It's actually going to stand out significantly more in most cases. Now this means that not only are we giving it that little extra pitch, but we are also going to usually add more stress to that one particular syllable. You ask me, who wants to go to the beach? Now I can respond by either saying, I want to go to the beach, I want to go, I want to, or I do. Now notice I'm not saying I. There's a special purpose there if I emphasize it. If I just give I the focus, but I don't make it stand out a lot. Compare I and beach. If I just make a normal statement, I want to go to the beach, I want to go to the beach. You can hear beach just a little bit more. Now what if I put it on I in response to this who question, right? It corresponds. Who? I want to go to the beach. I want to go to the beach. And remember, with the structural intonation, because I is now the focus, we're going to fall all the way down. The stresses are still there throughout the sentence, but beach doesn't get that little bump up anymore. Go to the beach. I want to go to the beach. Go to the beach. I want to go to the beach. It can be hard to hear, so you have to really pay attention to these things. So keep that in mind as you listen to natives moving the focus word around. Our next example, you ask, is that true? Now normally by default, I say, I think so. So think is stressed, right? And it's the focus. I think so. I think so. What if we emphasize that? I think so. I think so. Now it sounds like I'm trying to clarify, well, I don't know so, but I think so. What happens if I shift the focus with no emphasis? I just shift the focus to I. Is that true? I think so. I think so. And you notice it's very subtle. Think is still stressed, and so it can be kind of hard to hear, but the focus is actually on I. I think so. But instead of I think, it's I think. The effect that we get, instead of it being like, well, I think so compared to somebody else, no, I'm saying, well, in my opinion, right? If you ask me specifically. Now let's look specifically at contrast, whether emphasized or not. A contrast is all about comparing two or sometimes more things through the use of intonation. You can also contrast in other ways, like there's words like however that naturally create a contrast, but we're just talking about intonation here. We highlight an idea in one thought, and we contrast that, compare that with an idea in another thought. So we're highlighting two focuses in order to put them against each other. And that will depend on the exact context, the purpose, and sometimes also the emotion. Let's start with a simple example. How are you? Good, how are you? So we notice the basic structural intonation going on there. How are you? How are you? We talked a little bit about that. R is the natural stressed word here. We're falling from there. It's a WH question, so we're not going to rise at the end. We can rise a bit to show politeness. In the response, good, how are you? So notice now I'm not stressing R. In fact, I'm contracting R into hower. Now I'm stressing the you because it's contrast to the you that you asked, right? You're saying you referring to me, I'm saying you referring back to you. Now the interesting thing here, in addition to giving that extra contrast to the second you, we're also using that pass back rising intonation. Good, how are you? So we're not falling at the end structurally, we're actually rising, passing it back. But attentionally, the contrast is on you. Another example, and I actually use this a lot in my second job, let's say you go to a store and you buy something, and then before you leave, you say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then the other person, they can respond in many different ways, but you can actually respond by saying the same thing with a different intonation. Thank you. Interesting. So the thank is still stressed, right? That's our content word. In the first case, thank you. We're actually kind of falling and then rising a little bit to show that politeness, but it doesn't stand out on the you, right? We kind of fall on that you and then come up a bit for that politeness, which we talked about in the pullback effect lesson. But then when the person responds with the same words, thank is still stressed, but we're actually giving the focus to you, and that's going to stand out a lot more. Thank you. Thank you. Let's look at a bit of a different example. Let's say that we're looking at a photo. Now there are some people in the front, there are some people behind them. I point to one of them and I say, is that Tom? No, that's John. I point to another guy and say, I thought he was John. No, that's Adam. Then who's Tom? Tom's the guy in the back. So what's going on here through this exchange? So we start with a question. Is that Tom? Regular question, nothing special. I say, no, that's John. Simple response, no big deal. I thought he was John. So now we're getting he, which is usually not stressed. It's becoming the focus. Okay, we're emphasizing it as well. We're contrasting. I thought this person, he was John, but you're telling me this other guy was John. So saying, wait, what's going on here? You correct me again. You say, no, that's Adam. Now notice, no, that's John. No, that's Adam. No, that's John. No, that's Adam. You can get a little bit of a different intonation here because in the first case, I was simply correcting you, answering you, saying, no, that's not Tom, that's John. And then in the second case, you're like, well, wait, I thought this guy had that name. I'm saying, no, that guy is this guy. So the he and the Adam go together. I thought he was John. No, that's Adam. Now we're getting a lot of built-in contrast. Then who's Tom? Okay, I really want to know who. Who very naturally can get that focus because based on this context, I'm like, who is it? I don't know. It's not this guy. It's not this guy. Who's Tom? I could also say, then who's Tom? Then who's Tom? That also works in this particular case. Now notice again, they match. Who is Tom? Tom is the guy in the back. So because in this context, there's people in the front and there's people behind in the back, it is very natural to focus on back as compared to front. What if I emphasize back? And I say, Tom's the guy in the back. Tom's the guy in the back. Another example, you like dogs, right? No, I like cats. I'm allergic to dogs. No, I like cats. I'm allergic to dogs. So we have, you like dogs, right? You like dogs, right? Dogs, dogs, dogs. Compared to that, I say, no, I like cats. No, I like cats. Dogs, cats, dogs, cats. It's almost kind of like we can get like that or situation where we're kind of rising on one, falling on the other. I say, no, I like cats. That's just a basic statement of falling at the end. But then I add, I'm allergic to dogs. Now, if I just make a simple statement, I'm allergic to dogs. I'm allergic to dogs. Dogs gets that default focus word. I'm just saying what I'm allergic to, right? Dogs. But if I say, I'm allergic to dogs, I'm allergic to dogs. Now here, this might seem like a weird contrast because I'm not trying to clarify that I'm allergic to dogs versus something else or something like that, or that I'm not allergic to dogs versus being allergic to dogs. But based on this context, right, when I give you that extra information and I explain why I don't like dogs, why I like cats instead, I can give allergic that focus to basically be saying, this is the reason. And that is helping us to contrast dogs and cats. Again, no emphasis, no special emphasis, just I'm allergic to dogs. Now, if I emphasize it and I say, I'm allergic to dogs, I'm allergic to dogs, I'm clarifying or whatever. Another example, cats are excellent hunters. Cats are excellent hunters. Focuses on hunters, right? My response, my cat's an excellent sleeper. My cat's an excellent sleeper. So I'm actually contrasting two things here. The first statement was cats, meaning cats in general. So the first thing I contrast is my. I say, my cat. Now there's a little bit of emphasis there, and that's okay in this case. Now I could actually further emphasize, really make it stand out, and say, my cat. But now it sounds like I'm not just comparing my cat to general cats. It might sound sort of like I'm comparing my cat to your cat, so like two specific cats. Okay, again, context is important. I could also say, my cat's an excellent sleeper. My cat's an excellent sleeper. Again, one thought, now it just sounds like I'm contrasting sleeper and hunter. That's one way you can do it. Or, my cat's an excellent sleeper. So now I'm saying, cats are excellent hunters. My cat is an excellent sleeper. So you can actually, depending on exactly what we're doing, you can potentially contrast two focuses from the same sentence between two different thoughts, and they just match up together. The key takeaway here is that you need to pay very close attention to the exact context, the exact situation, and why a shift in the focus word, especially if there's no added emphasis, just sort of the shifting of that focus, why the speaker is doing that. Because remember, there's always going to be a reason.